Hello everyone, welcome to Business Live. Tonight on the program, commercial quarry operators express worry about encroachment of buffer zone around quarry sites, which is having a negative impact on extraction for construction purposes.
As we sit here, there are so many challenges facing the industry. And this comes from, of course, encroachment of buffer zones around the quarries.
Also ahead, an exclusive with founder and CEO of ID and Biometric Systems and Solutions provider Margins Group, Moses Baden, who shares insight into funding model for the Ghana card.
It's what you look at, not the investment. So the outcome is really given 900,000. That's why we thought that we should change the model. Because we feel that governments have their needs, but they're busy doing other things.
And tonight on the Joy Business Van, broadcast engineer Kofi Tando allows us into his OB van, assembled himself, who share his motivation and plans to upscale OB productions here in Ghana. Thanks for being with us. Details right after this. Well, first up, commercial quarry operators have expressed worry about the encroachment of the buffer zone around their quarry sites by settlements. Now, according to them, the situation is negatively impacting productivity, which could affect the extraction of rocks, sand, or minerals for construction purposes. The Commercial Quarry Operators Association of the Ashanti region is appealing to government and other stakeholders to take action to safeguard the multi-billion-dollar quarry industry, which continues to support job creation and contributes to GDP. John Dodu is former director of Geological Survey and advisor to the quarry industry in the Ashanti region.
As we sit here, there are so many challenges facing the industry. And this comes from, of course, encroachment of buffer zones around the quarries. Let me explain it a little bit further. After every quarry, when every quarry is given, there is a buffer of at least 500 meters around the quarry. The reason for this buffer is to make sure that the quarry is not encroached upon, because the activities of the quarry include blasting, and the rocks which are broken down can fly to a distance of about 300 meters. So to be on the safer side, 500 meters around the quarry have been selected or have been reserved for the quarry. But this is what is happening. There are a lot of settlers, building contractors, individuals are encroaching upon and making the quarry almost unoperational. Because when you encroach upon a quarry, then it makes it difficult for the quarries to operate within the specific terms which they are mandated because of the risks and others. And it is hoped that through this press conference, we shall hear something positive in this respect. In conclusion, we are saying that in the way forward, we are saying that the effective collaboration and coordination of the following underlisted agencies and the strong government action will produce the desired results.
We'll hear next from John J. Dodu, who is an advisor to the quarry industry in the Ashanti region, also indicating that the quarry sector, if harnessed, could bring more gains than gold mining.
Ports and harbors, tunnels, hydroelectric dams, water reservoirs, underground sewage, breakwater at seafront, pier, water reserves, reservoir dams, roads as base materials in waterlogged swampy areas. So we can see that this granite, which we are treating it in any way, is a very valuable material. And in fact, even the post-life of a quarry is also very important. It can be used for recreational purposes, for aquaculture, for irrigation, and for domestic consumption. So we could see that this industry is very, 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 very important. I have said that in so many places that the quarry industry, if managed well, can generate resources, which is even greater than from gold.
You're watching Business Live. Let's move away from that to this other story. Margins Group, the implementing company for the Ghana card, says it is on course to get everyone who must have the national ID on board. The ID and Biometric Systems and Solutions provider says it is fully paying for the cards now. Now, CEO of Margins Group, Moses Badian, has been speaking with Joy Businesses Odilia and Tiamwa on its funding model.
Okay, so we did the pilot somewhere in 2012 with the Foreigner's ID, where we designed a fee-paying system. And the thing was, okay, margins, if you know, you think you know what you're doing, and the first one that didn't work, then conceptualize, design, build, and finance what you think can work. We said we'll do that. Because why if it doesn't work? Because you don't have to worry about it. We're confident enough it will work. We're willing to invest in it on a fee-paying model, and then if it doesn't work, then we lose our money. That's how I felt it should be done. Because if the private people are convinced that it will work, why do they want government to finance it? And then if it doesn't work, they say, oh, we take our money and we go. That's what happened the first time. We collected data, we printed 4 million cards. We delivered only 900,000 cards. This is the first national ID project, after spending tens of millions of dollars. So the outcome is what you look at, not the investment. So the outcome is that we really deliver 900,000 cards. That's why we thought that we should change the model. Because we feel that governments have their needs, but they're busy doing other things. Private sector people who know what they are doing can conceptualize, design, build, finance at their own cost, so they can make sure that it works. Provided that the risks are properly quantified, and there's risk registered, the model works properly, and it's bankable. So we did the first one, and it worked with instant issues. So the idea was that, you know... So
and that was for only foreigners?
Foreigners.
Yeah.
But because the big national one had failed, the Bank of Ghana said, look, we need this national ID. But if Margins is doing the foreigners, that works. Then why don't they just do the nationals? That's how the conversation started. And so we started talking in 2014. We were asked to develop a new non-fee paying model. At that time, the late PVO was very convinced that if we were smart enough to define a fee model, then we should go in at our own cost, come up with a non-fee paying model.
And who pays for that, government? We
were supposed to figure it out. They told us, go and figure it out. You got the private sector, you know, the then NIA, Larry Jete as chairman. So we tried to figure it out. It was very difficult, but we worked together with NIA to find a non-fee paying model.
No, just before you go on to the non-fee paying model, how much so far have you, for example, garnered from the fee paying model, and how many people were?
Oh, because the fee paying model, we're supposed to have at least 750,000 foreigners living in Ghana. Anecdotal evidence says we have more than that, about 2 million. The thing is that how can we run a country safely when we don't know who's here? And because the government can then offer digital services to foreigners without them having to go through bribery and suffering, just go to a digital portal, you get electronic services, right? They should be willing to pay a fee that you test internationally to make sure that it's a fair fee, in order that they get the services. And there can be revenue to pay the private sector for their investment, their return on investment, and their debts. And there should be revenue to give back to the government. So it doesn't need to be a cost center. It can be a revenue center. That's the model. Today, I think we've registered something like 160,000 foreigners. So we're below the minimum number, which is 500,000. That's because, as the Bank of Ghana predicted, you couldn't enforce selectively just foreigners without doing the nationals. You get me? If you're going to do enforcement, they have to do that cross-board, you know, and it has to be beneficial. Yeah. So we haven't reached even the minimum commencement number, but now that there's an uptake of that side, the foreigners will come up. So we know where people live, why they're here, and we're able to plan better for socio-economical, political, and security reasons to run a better data-driven economy where decisions are based on big data analysis.
Information.
Not on superstition and guessing.
Well, some more information we're getting from that interview that may interest you. 95% of national identification programs worldwide, we are told, have not worked owing to the funding models and change of governments. Let's move on now. The Institute of Fiscal Studies has described the performance of Ghana's public sector revenue as very poor compared with our peers in the developing world. Now, this, it says, is a major cause of the country's excessive borrowing, leading to the high level of indebtedness and debt service costs despite receiving considerable amounts of debt relief under the Highly Indebted Poor Countries initiative in the mid-2000s. Now, Ghana was ranked third in the world and first in Africa with the highest interest payment because of our ballooning debt, which the economic and policy think tank describes as unsustainable. There is more in this report.
At a forum on the theme Ghana's domestic revenue mobilization woes, how do we fix it? The energy and policy think tank said revenue that are currently generated in the country are not enough to service the country's debt and pay salaries of public sector employees. Leslie Dwight-Mensah is a research fellow of IFS.
Since 2009, when we were spending 29.3% of public revenue on central government investment, and the dramatic deterioration such that by 2018, we're spending just about 10% of public revenue on central government investment. There has been an increase since then, including in 2020, driven by, election spending. But you see generally a declining trend in how much of the total public revenue mobilization goes into public investment.
Mr. Mensah also expressed worry that the country's present economic growth rate does not match its revenue growth, a situation he described could stifle the economy in the medium to long term if a remedy is not found.
Ghana's debt service revenue ratio is alarming and one of the highest in the world, reflecting the high cost of borrowing and low revenue mobilization. And because of these difficulties, government investment spending is falling, which will undermine the country's long-term economic growth and development. So what do we do? How do we deal with this debt problem, enhance public investment for accelerated growth? We ought to urgently address the revenue, expenditure, and extra budgetary issues that I highlighted. On expenditure, we have to make some very hard choices to realign public spending in favor of public investment by, one, cutting down the rate of growth of expenditure on public sector compensation.
On the role of the extractive sector in Ghana's comparatively low public sector revenue mobilization, senior research fellow at IFS Dr. Said Boachi said the country was earning very minimal from both the oil and mining sectors compared to its peers on the African continent. In 2018, the nation received 7.32 billion cedis from the extractive sector. However, excluding third-party revenues, the government received 5.73 billion cedis.
Of the 25 middle-income countries, Ghana is 23rd, higher than only 2 countries. Of the 14 sub-Saharan African countries in the sample, Ghana is 13th. And of all the economies in the sample, 35, Ghana is 32nd. It shows that Ghana is not doing well at all. But let's consider the performance assessment of Government of Ghana's revenue from the extractive sector, and it will help us to answer the question, is the extractive sector the main source of total revenue gap between Ghana and its peers? We saw that informal sector taxation is not the source. Real property taxation is not the source. The exemption system is significant, it's still smaller, as I said, than the gaps.
All right, you're watching Business Live. Still to come, broadcast engineer Kofi Tandor allows us into his Obi van, assembled himself. He will share his motivation and plans to upscale Obi Productions right here in Ghana. That story coming up after this break. Welcome back to the program. Time for the Joy Business Van. Question: what would you do if you were handed a van? An old and abandoned van for that matter? Well, broadcast engineer Kofi Tandor knew exactly what to do when he acquired one. Assemble an outside broadcast Obi van. With that van, Kofi hopes to offer broadcasting solutions and upscale Obi Productions here in Ghana in the wake of high demand. He is our feature on the Joy Business.
sort of expand, and there's very little limitation on this van. My first gig was at the Marriott Hotel. I think it was a Ghana Football Awards, and it wasn't an official gig, but I sort of went there with my van to support the main production crew, and it was useful in the end because they had a few problems that this one could sort of support. So we ran a few things back and forth, and then this was able to do it. But it wasn't without its challenges. I got to see what the challenges were with cable length. I got to see what the challenges was with integrating with other production houses. Come on, zoom in.
Ghana has a very vibrant sports industry with many outdoor events, but few get coverage. That is Kofi's target to begin with.
The main gap in the market that I identified was the unavailability of standard facilities in the country. And by standard facilities, I meant the vans that could do a standard football game or a standard general sport event. There wasn't much, if anything at all. There were only 2 facilities. But then you would find that there are more than 2 sporting events happening at any given time. So that means that there were lots of sporting events that were being overlooked.
Depending on the number of hours and the kind of production, be it sports, music concerts, festivals, the charges for clients may differ.
One major challenge that you will have in running a system like this is equipment. So getting the right type of equipment, being able to keep the equipment running, and being able to upgrade or replace the equipment when they are broken down. Every broadcast equipment are not cheap. They are really expensive. The cost of running it itself and getting your equipment maintenance and keeping it running is really high. Then finding the crew, the right type of people who understand the equipment and know how to use them to their fullest.
Obi Van productions are a niche thing. There are not so many entrepreneurs in that space here in Ghana. We've often had to rely on engineers from other countries to provide facilities and sometimes personnel. Kofi, however, has a bigger vision.
So I'm hoping that this will be the starting stages of OBs, especially OBs that are designed and built in Ghana. Most of the OBs around are imported. Trucks are imported, equipment are imported, but I'm hoping that at the barest minimum, we can begin to do some of the design stages in the country and sort of customize the design to meet our very specific workflow.
And Kofi believes it is very possible. At least assembling this Obi van has opened his eyes to potential here in Ghana.
There are some really good artisans in this country who know their trade, who we can fall on. For instance, if I didn't tell you that this interior was locally done, you probably would never know. But this was done locally. The flooring was done locally. The carpeting and everything, the lighting was done, everything was done locally. So, I mean, the fact that I have an engineering background, I was able to supervise and be specific about what needed to be done where. But then it doesn't take away from the fact that they know their trade and they were able to help me put all this together properly.
Kofi Tando is here to make an impact in the broadcast industry, an Obi van at a time.
So Joy Business Van, this has been a review of my self-built, self-designed Obi van. We're hoping that the future of the mixed effect solution hub Obi vans is to be able to design bigger, better, and more technologically current Obi vans, which will meet the world standard and can compete anywhere in this world.
And thanks for watching our program tonight. More news on our website, myjoyonline.com/business. My name is Darryl Kwao. Goodbye.